So we're going to look, the main topic of this is we're in Daniel chapter 3, and we're going to be looking at verse 7 through 30. And the main topic is the fiery furnace. And subtitle of this is The Plot Against Conscience. And we're going to talk also a little bit about technocracy today. Have anybody here ever heard of the word technocracy? It's been around since the 1930s. And they've been slipping it in slowly by slowly into this system, this world system we're living in. And we haven't recognized it. And only recently I've become aware that that's what they're doing. So I'm going to present that to you a little bit today too, so you'll see some of that. I'm still researching the subject, so I think more will be coming. So anyway, Daniel chapter 3, verse 7, "Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, of the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Wherefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews." Don't they always come near and accuse the Jews or the people of God in general? Particularly nowadays, Jews and Christians. "They spake and said to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. And verse 10, "Thou, O king, hast made a decree, and every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whosoever falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace." You know, if you don't worship the Lord your God, at some point you're going to be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace called the lake of fire. And I'm sure that no one in the sound of my voice is going to be to that party. Hopefully. "There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up." Buzz, 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 buzz. They're going around and they're trying to get the Jews into trouble. So then they're jealous because these guys, as we've seen, had been made very powerful men in the land. In verse 13, "Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king." And verse 14, "Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now, if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands?" So he's mocking. There's no God that's going to be able to deliver you from this fiery furnace, which I'm going to throw you into if you don't worship my gods. Imagine the scene as hundreds or thousands in the presence of Nebuchadnezzar were prostrate before the image, and out of that mass could be seen the figures of 3 Hebrew children standing straight and tall. Accusations were made against the Hebrew children, these Hebrews were set over the affairs of Babylon, and resentment was felt by certain Chaldeans. They were informing the king of the serious mistake in giving them that authority. They also reminded the king that to challenge Babylonian lawful worship was to challenge the king, so that there could be no mistake. Nebuchadnezzar would have his band play the music one more time to give them one last chance to comply with his decree. Play the music one more time. And when the music stops, and that's time is up. So we will not bow. This should be our motto, is we're not going to bow to the immoral decisions made by leaders in this world, no matter what country they're from, no matter whether they're from this country or not. We need to be able to say no, and we need to follow our conscience and follow our God. Follow the Scriptures. Do not bow to Caesar. Daniel 3:16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this manner. We're not going to be careful about our answer. We're going to say it straight out. Verse 17, if it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he would deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, we go to a better place, right? If not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. They have set up so many golden images in this world, and in our nation in particular today, for us to bow and worship towards. Social issues, things like that. We need to stand firm. The refusal of the Jewish children to worship gave the appearance of opposition to the greatness of his, or Nebuchadnezzar's, kingdom. There was a fellow by the name of Athanasius in around 400 A.D. that was opposing the heresy of Arius. And Constantine, I think it was Constantine, told him to, the world is against you, Athanasius. And Athanasius turned to the emperor and said, Athanasius is against the world. That should be our position. We are against the immorality and the evilness that we find in this world. They are saying we don't care about the consequences. It doesn't matter what man can do to us. We fear God instead. But no matter what, our God is able to deliver us. Our God is able to deliver us. This is faith. No matter what, whether we live or die, we would be delivered by our God. Better to have our necks cut off than to follow after the immoral practices and sit silently by and say nothing about the immorality going on around us. It's better that we speak out. Do not be silent, as so many are today, of what is going on. But no matter what, our God is able to deliver us. In any case, they will not serve the king's gods, nor worship the golden image. They will honor only the one true God. Like Daniel, they too refuse to compromise and bow to peer pressure. The world never likes those who do not follow the current fads and trends. Isn't that true? The world likes those people who fit identical profiles. So you need to be a clone of the world in order to fit in with the world. Otherwise, you're a square peg in a round hole. Right? But the Bible admonishes us in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, where it says, and I'm using a paraphrase version because I like the way it's expressed. I don't normally use paraphrases, but in this case, I'm doing it. Don't let the world around you squeeze you into its own mold. That's the J.B. Phillips Bible translation. I like the way J.B. Phillips puts it. Realize it is not a translation, though. I always like to say that because I believe the translation is the truer word, but this one kind of just says it the way I think we can understand it a bit. Because of the recent Supreme Court decision legalizing gay marriage, we as Christians may soon be faced with obeying Caesar or obeying God. For some, the time is already here. For some, the time to obey either Caesar or God is already here. Some have already made the choice to honor their conscience and have resigned their jobs. And there's some people that have done that I've noticed. Instead of issuing the marriage licenses, they've decided that their conscience won't allow them to do that, that they'll resign their jobs. I say the government really shouldn't be into the business of marriage licenses anyway. But this nation has chosen to ignore God. This has been a long war against the family. This is not just yesterday or last week or what have you. They've been attacking the family for many years. One of the tenets of Karl Marx was the abolition of family. This was in the Communist Manifesto. Did you know that? They wanted to eliminate the family. This was the ideal of Hillary Clinton when she advocated that it takes a village to raise children, or a child, I think is the way she put it. This is the premise of utopian society as described by Aldous Huxley in A Brave New World. That's actually a book, excellent book to read. The guy's a socialist himself, but book was right on. Nevertheless, I think his follow-up to that, Brave New World Revisited, probably was the best one for you to read. You can actually get it in the classic edition. You can get both of them in one volume. It's called Brave New World and Brave New World Revisited. Now this is a rebellion against God. Now just as with the communist experiment in Russia, for most of the 20th century, the family did not matter to the leaders, only that there should be enough workers for the required state production. So understand that carefully, because this is the way the world works. The family did not matter to the leaders, only that there should be enough workers for the required state production. That's essentially what we have today. It is workers to provide the labor to produce the product which they will sell back to you. Many on the left today want to produce what communism failed to provide, a utopian society. So they look at all the inequities of the world and they say, only if we could provide a way to make it equal when they talk about equality, they talk about equal cost for labor any place in the world. Essentially, that's what they want. In order to accomplish that, it is essential to these atheistic power brokers to change the worldviews and pull down the morals, values, and the religion of the people. This country was a nation of Christians, and over the years, many in the highest places worked diligently to remove the idea of Christianity in particular and religion in general from the minds of the people. And they wanted a religion of humanism. Another ideal of Karl Marx was that all religion must be abolished. Nothing has changed in this regards today. They believe that. Firmly, they believe that all religion should be abolished. Now, closely related to the ideals of Karl Marx is secular humanism. Communism and secular humanism are pretty much the same thing. Communism is essentially socialism with a gun, and secular humanism, if you look at all the tenets of both of these, they all match up pretty well. So humanism and communism go pretty much hand in hand. These are all pictures that I put up there that represent humanism. And when you see this fish on the back with legs on the back of cars, they're subscribing to humanism. Secular humanism was formalized in 1933 with the Humanist Manifesto. There's actually been 3 Humanist Manifestos. Humanist Manifesto 1 in 1933, Humanist Manifesto 2 in 1973, and Humanist Manifesto 3 in 2000. And they all pretty much same thing. They're anti-God, anti-religion, anti-nations. They believe that socialism is a preferred way to go, and this, by the way, is the only religion allowed to be taught in the public school system, humanism. Although they deny it's a religion because it's atheistic, it is a religion nevertheless. If you read the books, the manifestos that I described, you can get those. You can actually download those online, Humanist Manifesto, and you can compare those with Communist Manifesto, the tenets of communism and what have you, and realize that they're both the same, cut from the same cloth. So this manifesto was a statement of their religious beliefs, even though it was anti-God. It is a religion of atheism. This is the religion that is allowed to be taught in the public school system. The communism of Russia was a failure, and I believe it was an experiment by the elite of this world because it was well-funded. Lenin went into Russia in 1917 on a SEAL train with a bag of money given to him by international bankers, and so I believe it was something was funded. It was an experiment they were trying out. But anyway, it was a huge failure. The communism of Russia was a failure because it was forced at the point of a gun and did not allow the worker the fruit of his own labor, lacking incentive to produce. So they would not meet the quotas that was set out for them to meet. So it just nothing worked. They couldn't produce anything. It was worthwhile. Producing and what have you. Much of the agenda of the present world leaders is based upon the principles of Marxism. I believe people in high places in their own government are Marxist today. I believe that our current president is Marxist in his ideology. Okay? think that there's too many people would disagree with that statement. That's my belief. The aims of a Marxist is to, now listen to this, and think in your own mind, do we already have this going on in our own country? The aims of a Marxist, and it didn't start with this president. It's been going on and being instilled in our system almost from the very beginning. The aims of a Marxist is to abolish religion, abolish private property, abolish individuality and freedom, particularly in buying and selling. They have been chipping away at these rights and freedoms of ours over many years in this country. And abolish the family, abolish countries and nationalities, abolish morality. And in order to do all of this, they want to confiscate wealth and redistribute it. And so therefore they come up with the idea of a progressive income tax. And that's exactly what we have in this country, a progressive income tax. And that wasn't until 1913. At the founding of the Federal Reserve, they also passed the income tax law, the IRS stuff. And the purpose of the income tax is to guarantee the interest on the debt created by the Federal Reserve. If you were to pay the national debt off, take all your money out of your pocket, give it to the government to pay off the national debt, all the money would disappear into the inkwell of the Federal Reserve System. The dollar in your wallet represents debt. Your money is based on debt. Another tenet is to abolish all right of inheritance. So you can't pass on your wealth to your children. This is what they would like to do. They've attempted this over the years with inheritance taxes and things like that, but they haven't totally got that one going yet. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly, your national bank or your Federal Reserve System, which is a private bank, a privately owned bank, has an exclusive monopoly in this country to print your money, control your economy. And the national banks or central banks of other countries are all tied in together with this. Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the states. Right now, in 1980, about 50 corporations control the media, the newspapers and television and radio and what have you. Today, they have concentrated this down into the hands of no more than 6 corporations in this country, so they're getting tighter and tighter control of the means of communication, the way that you learn what is going on. They can control it. And it's only just a step away, and they will grab your internet as well. Okay? That's on the books as we speak. So you're not going to be able to get information very easily. You don't get it easily now. You probably you'll learn more about what's going on in the United States by going over to Europe and listening to their radio than you will about learning about what's going on in the United States by listening to our radio or television or what have you. In fact, your television is a form of entertainment, and the news broadcast is broadcast in such a way that they want to entertain you rather than inform you. And this is like smoke and mirrors, you know. You think you're getting informed, but you're actually getting deceived. Equal liability of all to labor means that if you don't want to work, they're going to force you to work. Free public education. They can control what the children are being taught. They get the minds of the children by free public education. This is one of the earliest things that happened in this country. Actually, if you read these children are far more educated at younger ages back in colonial times with their New England primer than they are with anything that we give them in the first, second, or third grade in this country. Go back and try to read New England primer. You probably need a dictionary to be able to read it because the words were more than one or two syllables. Abolish the distinction of town and country by a mere equitable distribution of population over the country. These are some of the goals of Marxism. If you consider carefully, we have most of these now operating in the United States today. Now, the equitable distribution of population over the country. Notice the Sustainable Development Map regarding redistributing population. This is nothing more than a population distribution map in the form of ecological preservation. And this comes out of the Earth Summit, Agenda 21 of the United Nations. People are being herded into the areas that they want them to work in. If you can find any green up there, that's where you're allowed to live. Is there any green up there? Now, there is, but it's it's in the urban centers mostly. It's where they want you to work. Eventually, they're going to herd you through various means into their work zones, and you'll be required to live in those zones so that you can commute without having to get into your car and drive yourself. It's my belief, based on years of study, that governments regulate the populations in the various nations. Regulate the populations. I believe this has been going on for years and years and years. Some means of population control used by states have been and are the following: wars. You want to get rid of some population? Start a war with somebody. Exporting people. That was done by England to this country. They exported people, called them indentured servants. They were nothing more than slaves. They were forced to move. They took them out of the jails. They did the same thing to Australia. So they exported people because the population, they wanted to get rid of the undesirables from the streets of England. And they exported the Irish because the genteel, I should say, English gentlemen wanted the land of the Irish. Okay? Find this out. Actually, if you read the right history books, you can find all this out. Birth control. Birth control is population control packaged to make you believe otherwise. Eugenics. Hitler did this. That was the he was getting rid of the undesirables. We did this in our own country. We and a number of states sterilized young ladies, or I don't know if men were involved, but I certainly know that young ladies were involved in sterilization back in the, I think it was the 20s and 30s, because they were maybe not mentally fit, according to the state, to raise their children. So they sterilized them. So eugenics programs. Abortion has nothing to do with women's rights, although they have made it a feminist issue in order to sell it to the people, but it has to do with population control. The more they kill of the unborn, the less they have, in other words, they can slow down the population growth in the country. Homosexuality is nothing more than a population control method, right? If they can get enough homosexuals to into that lifestyle, certainly there's no reproduction going on. Okay, so take people out of the reproduction business. Starvation. They can control your food supply. Now, I'm not going to accuse some of the corporations in this country that are into the GMO product, but I would challenge you to read a book called Seeds of Destruction. I can't remember the guy's name. If you want to know more about what they can do by genetically modifying food, they can actually take the nutrition out of the seed, and they can actually fill your stomach and you can still starve to death. That's a possibility. So they can control the food supply. Right now you can't go out and buy seeds that you can plant in your backyard and recover the seeds that they produce and replant them, because they won't grow, because the GMOs, Monsanto, ConAgra, some of these others have instilled a termination program into the seeds that they will not reproduce after their kind. Okay? So genocide is another one. Genocide simply because the genocide has been perpetrated by many countries against many individuals and what have you. In this country, it was perpetrated against the Indian people, and simply because we wanted the land that they were living on. Okay, so that was going on. Hitler certainly went after the Jews. This is certainly nothing new to any country in any part of the globe. Okay, so I believe that there's genocide going on down in northeastern Africa as we speak, against Christian people that are being persecuted by Muslims, and our leaders are not saying a word about it. They're letting it happen. Of course, we'll go and protect the ones that are politically correct. So, murder is another means of population control. Who was it? Stalin went after millions, killed millions. Hitler did the same. Murder. The Georgia Guidestones recommends the population be reduced to 500 million. And there's a picture of the Georgia Guidestones, written, I think, in 4 languages. So you want to reduce. So tell me how the world is going to reduce the population to 500 million, so that you and I can understand it from a moral perspective. They're going to do it. Yeah, they're going to do it. One way or another, they will do it. I believe that the implementation of the new system will be interrupted by several events: the rapture, the tribulation, and the second coming. Daniel 11 speaks of trouble for the end-time world leader. The utopian ideal of Huxley's brave new world was to entertain and sedate the people to get them to enjoy their servitude. Are you enjoying your lack of freedom under the Patriot Act as you go through the airports of this great nation? Although I'm happy that people are being checked. I'm not too happy of some of the things that we are subjected to because of it. But I would hate to think of the circumstances of one of these guys slipping through and blowing us up. So what do you do? Technocracy. I'm going to explain technocracy, this term here. And there's a couple of books there. The earlier book, actually there's one before that, and I can't for the life of me think of the name of it, but on the right side there is Between Two Ages, written by Zbigniew Brzezinski. Does anybody need explanation of who Zbigniew Brzezinski is and was? He was National Security Advisor for Jimmy Carter. He was also a Columbia University professor. And what he was writing here is Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. And nobody understood what that all meant. Now, maybe some people did, but I never picked up on it. I thought we were going towards socialism and that we were going to end up maybe with a different kind of currency and all of that. And for years I thought that way, but I'm starting to believe that maybe we're not heading to a different currency. We're heading to a different way of existing. And the book on the left there is called Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation, and by Patrick M. Wood. And I would recommend that book to anyone that really would like to know what is going on in this world in regards to economic systems and what have you. And it's an easy read. I would recommend that book highly. I'm going to explain a bit about it. Now, this is a quote from, now first of all, these people here, the pictures of these people here are involved. There is David Rockefeller, there's Zbigniew Brzezinski, the guy in the middle there, and the guy on the bottom you should recognize right away as Jimmy Carter. They're all involved in what I'm just about ready to describe to you. And Zbigniew Brzezinski, in his book, Between Two Ages, in 1970, wrote this: the technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Do you think we're a more controlled society today? And he says, such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. All sound familiar? Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. That should send chills up and down your spine, because that's exactly what's going on today. I think this is what Edward Snowden was trying to warn us about. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. Instantaneous retrieval. This is 1970, before you had your personal computers and all that sort of stuff. So Zbigniew Brzezinski, Between Two Ages, 1970. Now that's 1970, but this other book that I mentioned, Technocracy Rising, brings it all up to date. Economically, so what I'm saying is that they've told you what they're going to do. You just haven't been paying attention. None of us have. Now, economically, this brave new world order now taking form will probably consist of a replacement of capitalism with something called technocracy. Technocracy is an energy-based economy. It is the idea that science and technology will save us. It also has as its goal sustainable development with restricted land use. Remember the picture I showed you? It answers to why Al Gore was calling for cap and trade. It seems logical that technocracy is the holy grail of the New World Order now emerging. Technocracy promotes the belief that human beings are the root cause of societal problems directly related to biology, climate, and natural resources. So we're the blame for the whole thing. Society must be subjected to scientific management to prevent certain destruction. The ideas of sustainable development, Agenda 21, global warming, the UN's green economy, and the modern ecology movement all hold to these assumptions. Human beings must be constantly regulated and monitored. Isn't that what's going on right now? We're being constantly regulated and monitored. Distribution of energy resources and the goods they produce must be constantly monitored and measured in order to control society with scientific precision. All individuals must be monitored, measured, and controlled. That's where your little chip comes in your right hand or your forehead. In every facet of individual activity, including every bit of energy consumed by each individual. That's why they got the cell phones on your meters. To call them, they can instantly monitor your usage. The implementation of this new economic system will be elimination of national sovereignty and borders. Wonder why they don't want to close the border. Elimination of constitutional government. Elimination of private property. Elimination of political systems. Now, hey, that's an idea. That's a good idea, I think. Elimination of political systems. No representation, then. Okay? And management by scientists and engineers for efficient control, because they are the smart ones that know better. Money will not exist, thus preventing the accumulation of private wealth. Money won't exist. What a thought. Money will not exist. Energy credits, now, will be issued on a regular energy accounting cycle that can be used to purchase goods and services. These credits will expire at the end of each cycle when new credits are issued. So this is how they do it. Do you see that now? You're issued a credit based on energy consumption and other things. You get the credit, that's your money. You get to spend it. If you don't spend it, they take that away from you and issue a whole new set of credits. This is the solution that has been supported by Rockefeller's Trilateral Commission and others. It's just that no one was paying attention. Agenda 21 is the framework. Sustainable development is the driver. The Trilateral Commission with the United Nations is the promoter. David Rockefeller and Brzezinski are pushers. They have gained control with the executive branch since Carter. The executive branch is under the control of the Trilateral Commission since Jimmy Carter. Beginning with Carter, then Bush, which was in the Reagan administration, and Bush again on his own administration, then Clinton and Gore. Gore was part of Clinton, and then Bush W. and Cheney and Obama. This is the chain of control by the Trilateral Commission in the executive branch, and these are the guys. Now look at this face down there at the bottom right. changing focus of religion to humanitarian, not evangelizing, and that's Rick Warren and his purpose-driven and peace program and what have you. It all ties together with the Trilateral Commission, Sustainable Development, and technocracy. Our form of government requires an informed electorate. It is your responsibility to be informed, or you will lose your freedoms. Regarding to the king's decree, one might require, where was Daniel? We're back to Daniel now a bit. No clue is given, but you might surmise that Daniel was not present. He may have been outside of Babylon at this time. Execution. Daniel chapter 3, verse 19. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spoke and commanded that they should heat the furnace 17 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men, and that they were in his army, to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. In verse 21, then these men were bound in their coats, their hosens, their trousers, and their hats, and their garments were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. So the Babylonian smelting furnace was such that metal could be thrown in from a platform on top, and when melted, was extracted from the opening at the bottom and poured into molds. Now, iron was a common metal in those days, and the melting point of iron was 2,795 degrees Fahrenheit. The furnace was very hot indeed. It is known that there were similar ovens in Persia used for the execution of criminals. It is unknown how Daniel escaped this fate unless for some reason he was absent or was exempt because of his high office. Now, this was Nebuchadnezzar's method of disposing of undesirables, as Hitler later would use his gas chambers and ovens. This one here, I don't know whether that's Auschwitz or someplace, but that's was one of Hitler's, a couple of Hitler's ovens. Now, how do we know that this was a method of execution in Babylon? So how do we know this? In one of the earlier excavations at Babylon, a building was discovered which initially appeared to be a firing kiln like those used to fire bricks and pottery. A cuneiform inscription gives the purpose of the structure. And this inscription says, "This is the place of burning where men who blasphemed the gods of Chaldea died by fire." And that's Reamer, page 325. And then this demonstrates that the scriptural account is consistent with practices in ancient Babylon. There is a cuneiform inscription in the British Museum from the library of the Assyrian king Assur-banipal, which was discovered at Nineveh. The inscription reads, "Salmagnina, my rebellious brother who made war with me, they threw into a burning fiery furnace and destroyed his life." Kaiser, page 176. Jeremiah speaks of this practice in Jeremiah 29:21. "And of them shall be taken up a curse by all the captivity of Judah which are in Babylon, saying, The Lord make thee like Zedekiah and like Ahab, whom the king of Babylon roasted in the fire." The opening through which Nebuchadnezzar peered was possibly the one through which the fire could be soaked and fueled. The perfect number 7 means that they should make it as hot as possible. It's an indication of that they were stoking these fires to where unbelievably hot. I think the lake of fire is probably of the same temperature, if not greater. Daniel 3, verse 22, "Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. The men that cast them in were overcome and perished by the heat before they could cast the Hebrew children into the furnace. The verse simply states that the children fell down bound. The men that was throwing them in there were toast before they ever approached that opening, and they dropped them in, and the men just fell down into the furnace. The king was probably peering through the opening where the molten metal was usually extracted. He wanted to see them burn, but was astonished at what he saw. Astonishment. Daniel 3:25, he answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth, and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men, upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their heads singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, and trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language would speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. They were promoted. Nebuchadnezzar recognized that God can do what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had already told him. If God chooses, he can preserve. 3 entered the furnace bound. Now 4 were seen loose, walking around inside the furnace. The 4th man is like the Son of God. But it is doubtful that Nebuchadnezzar could comprehend that idea. But he did see the results of it. More likely, he thought of the 4th man as a son of the gods. This is something that Nebuchadnezzar could understand, but we can understand the term, the Son of God. He was saying that the 4th person looked like a divine or supernatural being. That's exactly what he was saying. In verse 28, the king said that God sent his angel. The Aramaic word translated angel is also used for deity. Therefore, with this in mind, he is clearly indicated as of heavenly origin. Who is the 4th man? There is much agreement that he is the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ, King of kings, Lord of lords. Prophetic implications. The incident of the fiery furnace has prophetic implications. Prophetic symbols in the fiery furnace. The tribulation is symbolized by the furnace. The Antichrist will be like Nebuchadnezzar, a proud, godless, violent, out-of-control, one-world Gentile leader. That's what we got to look forward to if we stick around much longer. That's why I think the rapture is going to come soon and take us to his place. But before that comes, you may see tribulation, a tribulation. Not the tribulation, but tribulation is coming on this world. The false prophet will be like the herald who told everyone to worship the statue. The abomination of desolation will be like Nebuchadnezzar's grotesque statue. The 4th man will be like Jesus, who helps to his people Israel. The absence of Daniel. Remember, I asked you, where did Daniel go? The absence of Daniel could signify the church, which will not be present during the tribulation because of the rapture of the church. Faithfulness. The faithfulness of the Hebrew children resulted in Nebuchadnezzar's public acknowledgement of the power of God. God was glorified by his ability to deliver them from the fire. We may not be asked to endure the trial of being burned alive, but we are under trial nevertheless. Satan is the prince of this world, and he seeks to destroy our faith in God any way he can. 1 Peter 5:6, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, is a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour, whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. We're not suffering yet. We're not suffering yet. But there are people in this world that are suffering today for the cause of Jesus Christ. We must be steadfast in our faith, which will result in the ultimate glorifying of God by our lives. In Romans, Paul writes in Romans 12:1, remember I misquoted by a paraphrase some time back. This is the whole thing. Romans 12:1, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Our lives must be a living sacrifice to God, not being conformed to the world, and transformed in our minds so that we can know and do what is the perfect will of God. Hallelujah. I do not want to be around here much longer, I can tell you that. But if so, our God can deliver us.